I mean, this thing is about this thing. What?
What's up, Lego builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. No, your eyes don't deceive you. This is in fact a Mimban update. It's been over a month since the last one, since I just needed some time away from the build. But the break is over and I have a lot of building on deck, as well as explaining why Mimban disappeared. I've got a couple places that are holding up progress on the mock, namely the inner base walls. They're uglier than Anakin post-barbecue, and I need to make a big breakthrough this week and figure out some cool details to make them look less boring. I also need to figure out what's sitting next to the prison pit. And I'm designing a potentially controversial Imperial ship that I want your feedback on. So grab some non-addictive death sticks, don't forget to execute Order 66 on that like button, and let's get to work. Anytime I stop working on a mock for a while, it turns into the den of a womp rat, collecting random builds, bins, and anything else I'm too lazy to put away. So to start, I'm going to get the base cleaned out and ready for some serious upgrades. The reason I took the month of January off from Mimban is mostly because of parts. I was running really low on all things reddish brown, as well as 16x16 plates, which meant I couldn't really start the next section of the mock where the trench is. I felt like I'd be scraping together updates with minimal progress and mostly just doing them to get a video out until I got a huge influx of parts. And I've been feeling like I need to pick up the pace with this series, so a break to gather a bunch of pieces and prepare for another big push to get the mock done felt like the best move. This small, insignificant back corner of the base has been a thorn in my side. I don't know what I want to do here, but I can't finish the wall or start the roof until it's done. I finally realized, why do I need to put something fancy here? It's in the back, no one's really going to see it, plus my options are pretty limited. It's not like I can put a Build-A-Vader chamber back here, so I just copied the series of doors from the other side. It always feels good to get through a sticky patch of the build. It usually means an explosion of progress isn't far behind. Sand blue is a really underrated color, especially when working with gray. It's not too vibrant to look out of place, but adds some nice color contrast. The downside is it can be hard to source. It's time to turn my attention to the walls. I've been thinking long and hard about what I can do to make them look better. Right now they're just very plain and flat, especially this side. One thing I've realized recently is you don't need some crazy build or technique to make something look cool. Often a combination of simple builds will do the trick. One build in particular is the simple pipe or wire. I attached some 1x1 clips to brackets and stuck them in the wall, that way I have something to connect my pipes to. I'm using generic Lego Flex pipes and connecting them together via half pegs. I've used this in the past to create a nice greebling effect, and in this case these are electrical wires running through the base. Next I made an intersection piece so I can run wires out in multiple directions. In this case I want to run some out of the bottom down to the base floor. I really enjoy small aesthetic builds like this. I don't need to worry about load bearing, stability. I can just focus on making something fun and interesting. This is where I get to use my smaller greebling pieces that don't often see the light of day. It's always fun experimenting with something that isn't a plate or slope. I used a couple clip and bar pieces to make two small 90-degree corners so I can run the wires down to a computer on the ground. It's the same computer used for checking vehicles into the repair bay or betting on a late night pod race. The other set of wires is running down to a breaker box so there's a safe connection from the outside power source to the wires inside. I thought about adding some more vents or greebling, but don't want to overcrowd the walls with unnecessary detail. I still want this to look like an organized military base and not the discount rack at a hardware store. I've made a good amount of progress in the base, and now it's time to reward myself by going outside of the base to work on some terrain. I got a mountain of reddish brown plate and tile and need to figure out what's going in this blank patch next to the prison pit. My original plan was just some kind of generic military structure like a bunker or storage pods to take up space. I don't remember where exactly, but I saw some round pods in one scene during the Mimban arc of Solo. That sparked an idea. I'm gonna build a bunch of storage silos. I'm starting by laying out a foundation to build on. Mimban is a swampy mud ball, so everything seems to be up on some kind of raised foundation or dais for protection. I wanted to challenge myself a little and make something other than a basic rectangle platform. So I'm using a bunch of quarter round tile for the corners and creating a series of steps leading up to the top, thus creating a really short but long and wide pyramid. This will better keep the equipment and silos out of the dirt and mud. Once the side stairs are in, I can tile off the top. I speckled the build with dark orange and reddish brown pieces to make it look more dirty. When the word silo is mentioned, I typically think of some kind of round structure, so I'm starting there and building a roof out of round plate and tile. I don't really know what I want the top to look like, so I just threw on some more quarter round tiles and capped the whole thing off with a large dish. If you want to get a six-pack fast, do 15 sit-ups every time I say the word round in this video. I swear it's in every other sentence. I wanted the sides to have some detail, so I left a gap between the round pieces so I could slide in some panels with ingots on them to create a ribbed effect. I wanted to waste as little dark bluish gray tile as possible on the top of the platform, so I left a hole where each silo will sit. Let me know in the comments what you think these silos should be holding. As I've stated, Mimban is not a place you want to walk around on in flip-flops. It's about as hospitable as a World War I battlefield, so I'm going to build a series of walkways above the mud so people can move around the compound with relative ease. I'm starting at the landing pad and will run the walkway to the base entrance. I need to keep the walkway as close to the storage silos as possible so it doesn't creep into this area and get in the way of the turbo tank driving through. The walkway will also branch out to the left and lead up to the storage silos. It's nice to finally have the bigger builds in place so I can start adding in smaller stuff like walkways. I also noticed there are lots of random poles, antenna, power cells, whatever you want to call them, sprinkled throughout the Imperial base on Mimban, so I'll probably add some of those as well. The walkway is real easy. I'm just tiling off the top and adding cheese slopes to the sides, making sure to throw in some now very familiar mud detailing left from muddy boots and splashes from passing vehicles. I've been trying to spice up the inner walls for quite some time now, and I'm shocked at how much better they look by just adding some electrical wires. The wiring isn't flashy or complex, but is instantly recognizable and adds so much texture and realistic detail to the walls. I did modify the breaker box area. I ran the wires so it looks like they're going into the box instead of behind it, which I felt like was more accurate. It's really nice to finally have the entire walkway finished. I've been putting off and thinking about this very unimportant corner for so long it was holding up the overall progress of the base. Part of the problem was also my sand blue collection is about as big as a sequel fan club meetup, and so it's taken me a while to get enough pieces to finish the doors. I do need to get one more number in for that last door. Unfortunately, in my haste to get this area finished, I made a critical error, and although it's nothing like putting a spaceship-sized tube in my battle station, it's still pretty embarrassing. There's no way to get down from the walkway. I kept planning to put stairs in and they kept getting moved as I'd forget to add them, and I just don't think this slide's gonna cut it, so I need to get some stairs in ASAP. As much fun as I've had in the base, so far the real progress has been happening over here. I wasn't really sure what I wanted this little patch of the base to look like since it's not critical to the overall story and the builds are just filler, but I'm really liking what's starting to take shape. Using dark bluish gray as the foundation allows the light bluish gray silos to stand out better against the dark terrain. I only had enough parts to make 2 of them, but figuring out the design was the hard part, and now I just need to order in the rest of the pieces to build the other 2. I also added a computer and gauge for monitoring whatever's going on here, I guess. I wasn't sure about using round tile for the corners as I was worried this would look more like a temple or some kind of ornate platform, but I still think it looks like a military structure, and it's always nice to work in some roundish structures into a Lego mock. The walkway is a little too close to the silos for my liking, but I have barely enough room for the juggernaut to drive through this area, so I don't dare move it. I made a mistake over here and put down a bunch of reddish brown plate thinking I was going to add a layer of tile on top of that, but I'm only adding 1 layer of tile to the ground, and if I were to run on top of these plates as well, the ground would be too tall. So unfortunately I'm going to have to pull up pretty much all of this section, or just have a giant patch of exposed studs which won't match the rest of the terrain. But that's mock building for you. Sometimes you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, right into a pile of... I plan on spending the rest of the update working on some vehicles, but first I want to get a little patch of the terrain done around where I was building earlier. This is the first time I get to build some finished terrain inside the base, and the ground inside is going to look very different from what I've been doing out in the wastelands since everything in here has been packed down and trampled flat. Plus there aren't any explosions going off, so no craters. I'm doing a layer of plate and tile and decided to sprinkle in some dark orange highlights, but I'm not sure how exactly to integrate the dark orange. Do I sprinkle in some small patches of 1x1 and 1x2s, or do I use wedge plate to create more substantial shapes? For now, I'm just going to try a couple of different options and see what looks best. While scrubbing through the Battle of Mimban, I saw a beautiful sight. Foliage. It's not much, but seeing this gives me the green light to add some plants of my own. I'm using some bush pieces and olive green leaves to create some scrubby sagebrush looking plants you would see in a desolate climate like Mimban. I got a lot of feedback on the turbo tank I built a while back, and the most common thing was to change the windshield. I agree, the red was too cartoonish and loud, so I'm swapping it out for some trans red parts. I need that transparent effect so it looks more like an actual windshield. Luckily, this is an easy fix since other than the front cockpit, none of the red tile is hard to remove. I don't know why I just didn't do this to begin with. The original windscreen color was plain black, so maybe I was just trying to stick with solid colors, or I just wasn't really thinking about transparent parts. Who knows? Drop a comment below if there are any other mods you would like to see me add to the Juggernaut, maybe like some tire chains or extra cannons. It's time for the main course, the reason why you probably clicked on this video, the Imperial Gunship. I want to include more ships in the mock, not just tanks and walkers, so I'll be modifying the M5 build's gunship since there's no need to build an entire new one from scratch. This is basically a recolor job. I pulled off most of the exterior panels and wings and built new ones in the right colors. I'm going with a light bluish gray base coat and replacing all the dark red with dark bluish gray highlights. So I'm stripping all the wedge plate and tile off and replacing it with gray. Now that the body's been bathed in all the right colors, I can attach the various panels and wings, and it'll be time to see if this was a bad idea or not. It's nice to finally start figuring out the terrain inside the base compound and cover up more of the filler plate. I really like how the plants turned out. The olive green, while lacking the vibrance of your typical plant piece, provides the perfect, subtle pop of color to help the scrubby foliage stand out but not look out of place. I'm not super happy with how the overall terrain looks though. I can't put my finger on why exactly. Maybe the patches of dark orange are too sporadic and blocky in shape, or perhaps the ground is too flat. I added some roundish piles of wedge plate to hopefully break up the flatness and provide some depth and texture, but I'm still not satisfied. Let me know in the comments if there's anything that stands out to you. The turbo tank looks much better and is now completely done. The red tiles look much more like windshields, and I still get that menacing look. This is the last thing you want to see rolling up on you and your scruffy gang of rebels camped out in the wastelands. I'm 2 for 2 this week on vehicles since the gunship looks so mean. The simple but brutal colors of the Empire translated over to the ship seamlessly. I'm not sure where exactly this would go in the mock. Perhaps gliding over the wastelands, carrying a squad off on a mission, or on the landing pad depositing some VIPs. Although this is more of an attack craft and not a taxi, so maybe the Imperial shuttle would make more sense in this situation. Let me know in the comments, should I use this Imperial gunship in the mock, or go with something more related to the Empire like a TIE fighter or Imperial shuttle? I did already repurpose one Republic vehicle, so it might be good to throw in some strictly Imperial ships to help balance things out. I don't want the Imperial fans thinking this is gonna end up a glorified Clone Wars mock. Man, it's so good to be back building Mimban again. I always love returning to a big mock after a break. The building is more detail oriented, the videos are slower paced. It's all about the mock and creating a compelling update. I got some great stuff done this week. I'm especially pleased with the wiring in the base. But the next update is going to be all about the trench, because pretty much all the rest of the mock hinges on that trench being in place. Part of the reason I've been putting it off is I just don't really have any idea how I'm going to build it, but there's only one way to find out. That's a wrap for this video. Don't forget to let me know what you think about Mimban down below in the comments, and until next time, happy building.